First thing I want to talk about is Greg Cosell, who I have the utmost respect for. He is one of the great football minds. His dad was a great football mind. NFL films. I mean, he's one of the best in the business, and I think we can all agree on that.
Is it his
but
dad or is this? I think it's his uncle.
Uncle, what is it? His
Howard,
uncle? I thought
Howard,
it was his dad.
The great Howard.
Yeah.
Cosell, I think was his uncle.
Was it his uncle? Okay. All right. Well, his uncle. Either way, both great football minds. Greg Cosell made a comment about the 49ers loss to the Ravens. And he said something along the lines of, hey, you know what? Not a lot to worry about. They put up a ton of yards. They were on pace for over 500 yards. If you look at the first half, it was just the turnovers. They moved the ball just fine. So, Larry, I'm going to start with you on this one. I know that Cosell is one of your favorites. You've referenced him quite a few times, and I know you respect him. What are your thoughts of this comment here? Do you agree with him, or do you disagree with him on his premise?
Well, I mean, his point is just that it wasn't like the Ravens stopped the Niners per se. It was partially the Niners stopping the Niners. Now, how much do you put on? I mean, to me, it's hard to evaluate Greg's thoughts. I mean, he's just saying, hey, you know what? They had 230 yards of offense in the first half. They could have put up 500 yards of offense against the number one defense, and wouldn't we be talking a different story at that point? But the turnovers are real, and just like anything else. I mean, the same way the turnovers burn them. Brock played good against Minnesota. He got burned by the turnovers though, and he played good against Cincinnati, but he got burned by the turnovers. So turnovers will get you beat every time, and they did in this game. So I think this game is a little bit more interesting than just that. I think there were real things that the Ravens did that we can discuss tonight. And to me, the things that they put on the film as bothering Brock Purdy led to my question to Brock today, which is, do you feel like after watching the film that you have answers for what the Ravens did? Because similarly to the way the Niners rushed Jalen Hurts, Cowboys copied it, and Hurts struggled. I wouldn't be surprised at all if the Commanders copy some of the things that the Ravens did, and we're going to find out if the Ravens' success against Brock Purdy and the Niners offense was more personnel related or scheme related, because I think some of those scheme wrinkles are going to appear once again, and how the Niners handle it will determine quite a bit.
What about you, Coach? Do you subscribe to the fact that there's almost a moral victory coming out of this game based off of the way they were able to move the ball before some of the turnovers, or do you not subscribe to that?
Well, no. And I just broke the game down in a couple of ways. And I love Greg Cosell. Like there's a lot of things that I've learned from Greg Cosell, and his word does not change who he is as a man in this sport. But let's just go by the numbers. So the Niners had a total of 492 total yards. Okay. Greg Cosell said that the Niners in the first half, they had what, 232? Didn't he say that right? Correct, Larry?
230. Yeah, he said 230.
Right. So they had 230. They had 230 of those yards in the first half, right? That's with the 3 picks. In the second half, if you go by the play-by-play, the Niners, the score was 33-12 before the Niners turned over on downs on a 7 for 29-yard drive. Okay. It was 33-12. Then they went on a 12-play, 90-yard drive that took up 40 minutes. That took it to 33-19. Then they had another 13-play drive for 47 yards where they threw another pick. That was Sam Darnold's last pick of the game. So if you look at it for when the game was pretty much decided after the Niners threw that last interception, and then the Ravens came right back around and scored 30 and 33 to make it 33-12. Out of that 90-yard drive that happened with 4 minutes, with basically 6 minutes left to go in the fourth quarter, and another long drive that didn't matter, you got about 147 yards of offense tacked off, which puts you at 282 total yards for the day. So if we got 230 in the first half and we're looking at 282 yards of the day, and then we're looking at damn near 150 yards of garbage time offense, that doesn't necessarily bode well as far as what we saw on film, right? So you can go by the numbers, and the numbers are great. But I feel like that the Niners were a little more focused on X's and O's, and the Ravens were focused on Jimmys and Joes. They were focused on individual matchups and beating us to the point of attack in certain scenarios. And they were willing to give up and sacrifice certain things on defense in order for them to keep their true mantra. I feel like a little bit of the progress and the movement that we got on offense was fool's gold in some aspects. And it kind of got us out of our identity. I mean, by the time we threw our third pick, Brock had already let the ball go almost north of 19 times, and we had only ran the ball 12 times with Christian McCaffrey. And the only time that we actually got our first touchdown drive is when we had one drive right before the half where the entire drive was Christian McCaffrey, right? The entire drive was him. So for me, I don't want to get caught up in the weeds with the numbers and the production, because that's quite frankly, that's what we do. We get yards. We move downfield, right? That's what we do. But for me, I'm looking at the end result of what this team has been, what we've been doing with this team. And I'm not too impressed with kind of giving anybody any kind of like any break just because we racked up numbers, right? We made for what it's worth. I don't agree with anybody putting the picks, right? Because the picks are a symptom of why we lost, but it's not the true disease of why we lost. The picks are emblematic of Kyle not adjusting when he needed to. After we threw 3 picks, right? By the third pick, it was still the first half, and the score was 13-12 with the touchdown with Christian McCaffrey. We were down 1 point after 3 picks. So I understand that, we can look at the totality of the game and then kind of use it as a buffet and pick out what we want to make our whole narrative. But if you look at where those numbers came from throughout the entire game, you could see where a lot of that stuff is hollow numbers, and we thoroughly got dominated, regardless of what the statistics say.
Yeah, I'd posted on Twitter about this. I was like, oh, cool, they got yards, great. And a lot of people are like, well, I mean, what he's saying is like the 49ers could. I'm like, I know what he's saying. My point is the 49ers are a team that, and I still think they actually are, but going into the game, were certainly big Super Bowl favorites. They were fighting for the number 1 seed in the NFL, essentially, not just the NFC, but the NFL. This was for supremacy going into the playoffs and being a clear favorite. And they got boat raced at home. To me, this is not a team that we can say, oh, well, they got moral victories. No. This team is looking to win a Super Bowl. Moral victories need not apply. I don't care about the yards. Yards don't mean points necessarily. They can, but not always. There are teams that are in the top 10 offensively for yards, but they're ranked like 20th in points. Who cares? You know what I mean? So I understand what he was saying to a certain extent, but I also feel like, and I guess this is my biggest concern, I feel like the 49ers are taking on this same thought that Cosell has, which is, we beat ourselves. The Ravens didn't come in and beat us. We beat ourselves. And to me, if that is the approach, that's just the vibe I get. I don't know for sure. I'm not in the locker room. I can just go off of the way that I see it. But if that is truly the way they feel, I think that is a error and judgment on their part, because the Ravens certainly did some things to go out and take that game from the 49ers. That's my feeling on it.